The glass doors of Bellingrove Organics headquarters whooshed open with that familiar hiss, the kind Clarice Monroe had heard for 7 years now. She stepped inside, balancing 2 craft paper bags of hand-picked produce in one arm and a digital scanner in the other. Rain clung to the sleeves of her navy delivery jacket, but her back remained straight. Her eyes scanned the lobby, polished marble floors, golden elevator trims, and people who never said her name correctly. "Delivery girls here," one young assistant called toward reception without looking up from his phone. "Clarice Monroe," she corrected quietly, setting the bags down. They never bothered to learn it, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't care. Just another errand girl? Clarice Monroe was 42 years old. She'd once studied financial accounting at a top community college. She once dreamed of becoming a CPA, but when her mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer during her final semester, Clarice dropped out, took on 3 jobs, and never looked back. Now she delivered organic foods to the rich. She saw everything: the flirtations in hallways, the furious phone calls behind half-closed doors, the champagne-fueled Friday night strategy sessions. She walked among them invisible, until that day when she overheard everything. A door left open. Clarice was on the 17th floor, delivering almond milk and fresh berries to the executive lounge when she noticed it. The boardroom door cracked just enough to let sound spill. She wasn't eavesdropping, but she paused, just a beat too long. "We finalize the deal next Friday," a voice said, sharp, familiar. "Everett Langston, the CFO. Under the radar before the quarterly filing," another voice added. "Genevieve Ward, the COO. Clarice froze. "You really think no one will notice us tanking the numbers to drive the valuation down? We'll blame the supply chain, then sell it to Louisville Foods, walk away with triple payouts, and no SEC trail." A beat of silence, then laughter. Cold, clinical, final. Clarice's stomach dropped. They were sabotaging the company, on purpose. What they didn't know: Clarice wasn't just a delivery woman. She still reviewed investment reports on weekends, still tracked earnings calls, still kept spreadsheets of market trends, out of habit, maybe, or buried longing. And she had one other thing no one in that room did. She cared about Bellingrove, because while they saw a paycheck, she saw families who depended on this company for clean food, like her own community, who ordered Bellingrove products through donation drives Clarice helped organize on her off days. The mockery. That same afternoon, as Clarice walked back through the parking garage, she passed Everett and Genevieve standing by their imported sedans. "Miss Monroe," Everett said, not out of kindness. "Hope you don't mind I tipped you in advice last time." Genevieve smirked. "Try investing in better shoes. Yours squeak." Clarice glanced down at her rubber-soled work sneakers soaked from the rain. She said nothing. But in her mind, something shifted. She wasn't just delivering fruit anymore. She was delivering truth. And the next time she walked into that building, she wouldn't be carrying a bag. She'd be carrying evidence. Clarice sat in her tiny apartment above the laundromat on 83rd and Mission. The kitchen smelled of lemon balm and old carpet. On the table were 2 things: her mother's framed photo and an open notebook filled with names, numbers, and timestamps. "If I'm going to burn this all down," she muttered to herself, "I better have the receipts." And she did. The hidden skill set. Most people assumed Clarice Monroe was just another delivery driver. What they didn't know was that for the past 5 years, she'd been using her old accounting textbooks to analyze Bellingrove's public filings in her free time. She noticed patterns: warehouse discrepancies, inflated shipping costs, and executive bonuses that didn't match seasonal earnings. She hadn't acted on it, until now. Now she wasn't just noticing, she was documenting, and she knew she needed help. The retired ally. His name was Robert Bob Kastner, a retired securities lawyer who lived 3 floors down. Clarice used to deliver fresh herbs to him every Thursday. He once told her, while sipping tea on the fire escape, that he put more men in white-colored jail than he could count. So she knocked on his door. He opened it slowly, adjusting his thick glasses. "Miss Monroe, you look determined." She showed him the notebook. "I overheard something. I've been watching this company die from the inside, and now I know why. I want to stop it, but I don't want to end up jobless or in jail." Bob looked through the pages. His eyebrows lifted. "Holy hell," he whispered. "This isn't a company, it's a con." The power of proof. Over the next 2 weeks, Bob helped her convert her messy handwritten notes into a legal brief, complete with timestamps, whistleblower protections, and an anonymous submission strategy. But Bob had one more idea. Don't just file a complaint, get leverage. "How?" Clarice asked. "We need to prove intent to defraud shareholders. That's criminal. But to really turn it around, we need to hit them before the sale happens. Expose it at the shareholder meeting. Force an emergency vote." Clarice blinked. "But I'm just—" "No," Bob cut in. "You're the most prepared person in the building." The turncoat. Every heist needs an inside man. Clarice found hers in Felix Reyes, a junior IT tech she'd once helped fix his car battery in the parking lot. He owed her. And more importantly, he hated Genevieve. With his help, Clarice accessed the company's email logs, including damning internal threads and a secret schedule marked Acquisition NDA LOVOR Confidential. They had enough. It was time to fight back. The plan. The shareholder meeting was 10 days away. Bob coached Clarice on how to file a legal motion that would prevent the sale from closing without full disclosure. Felix helped her leak select files to 2 local business reporters under an anonymous email address. And Clarice practiced her speech every night, standing in front of a cracked mirror with a wine bottle as a microphone. She didn't need revenge. She needed justice for herself, for the workers, and for every customer who trusted that logo. The threat. 3 days before the meeting, she received an unmarked envelope at her door. Inside was a note. "Walk away, Miss Monroe. You're too deep. Stay in your lane." And a photo, her apartment window, taken from across the street. Clarice's hands trembled. She wasn't naive. This was intimidation. She called Bob. "We keep going," he said. "You've already won. That note proves they're scared." Clarice looked out her window. She didn't see a threat. She saw a mirror. And in it stood a woman who refused to be erased. The Bellingrove shareholder meeting was being held in the top-floor ballroom of the Halberton Hotel, where gold chandeliers hung like frozen thunderbolts and crystal water glasses clinked like polite warnings. Clarice Monroe stood in the back of the room, dressed not in her delivery uniform, but a simple dark blue dress she'd borrowed from Bob's niece. Her curls were pinned neatly, her posture unshakable. She looked like she belonged. No one noticed her. Not yet. The parade of power. Up front, Everett Langston adjusted his tie, pretending to check his phone. Genevieve Ward whispered to the general counsel with a smirk. The podium bore the Bellingrove crest, flanked by projections of positive quarterly charts that Clarice knew were a lie. "Let's begin," Everett said, tapping the mic. He didn't notice the envelope resting silently in his assistant's inbox. Not yet. The setup. The opening 30 minutes passed in polished monotony, talk of logistics, upcoming vendor partnerships, employee satisfaction surveys. Then came the bombshell. "As we close," Genevieve said, "I'd like to announce a proposed acquisition." A sharp, clear voice interrupted from the back. "Objection." Heads turned. Gasps. Clarice walked down the center aisle, heels clicking on marble like punctuation marks. Bob Kastner followed behind slowly, cane in hand, dressed in a faded suit and tie with a U.S. Court's lapel pin. "Who's that?" someone whispered. "Is that the delivery woman?" another hissed. Everett's face went pale. Genevieve's smile froze mid-sentence. The evidence. Clarice stopped at the center of the room and handed a thick binder to the moderator. "I request this document be entered into the meeting record under Section 3.7 of our governance charter," she said clearly. "It contains evidence of financial misconduct, insider fraud, and violation of fiduciary duty by several members of this board." "This is outrageous," Genevieve barked. "She doesn't have standing." "She does," Bob cut in. "Miss Monroe owns 0.02% of Bellingrove stock. That gives her voice, and the evidence she presents is admissible." Screens flickered, and then the emails appeared, projected for all to see. Subject lines: "Drive inventory numbers down before Q4, Jen." "Louver NDA signed. Don't leak until Friday." "We bleed this now, we cash out later, EL." Murmurs exploded into shouting. "The collapse begins." Board members looked at each other. One quietly excused himself to make a phone call. A woman from the audit committee stood up furious. "You lied to this entire company." Clarice didn't flinch. "You lied to the workers. You lied to your investors. You lied to the people who believed in this name. You built something beautiful and tried to sell it off like scrap." She turned to the crowd. "But I remember why this company mattered. I've seen it from the bottom, and now I'm fighting for the top." Silence. Then applause. It started slow, from the back rows. A young logistics clerk stood, then an HR manager, then half the room. The applause grew like thunder. Genevieve, gone. Everett, frozen. Aftermath. Within hours, the deal with Louver was dead. The board called for an urgent review. Everett and Genevieve were placed on immediate leave pending legal investigation. Clarice, invited to speak with the interim board chair. "You dismantled an entire fraud operation," he told her. "What do you want next?" She didn't hesitate. "I want to help rebuild it." "Right." The elevator rose in silence. Clarice Monroe stood alone, eyes watching the numbers blink. 12, 14, 17, 20. Her reflection in the chrome doors didn't look like the woman who once hauled crates through loading docks. Her dress was navy and sleek, her heels steady, her stare resolute. When the door opened on the 22nd floor, the executive level, she stepped into a hallway she'd only seen from behind a mop bucket. Now she walked it as the incoming interim executive advisor to the new board. The temporary crown. The title wasn't permanent, not yet. But she didn't need permanence to make change. Inside the corner office, once belonging to Genevieve Ward, her name now shimmered on a gold desk plate, Clarice Monroe. Bob had smiled when she showed him the offer. "Not bad for a woman with squeaky shoes." "I got new soles," she'd replied. Cleaning house, this time from the top. Her first move? Transparency. She called every department head into meetings, including the cleaning staff, cafeteria team, warehouse leads, all the people who'd been ignored for years. This company can't pretend to be premium while treating its people like they're disposable, she told them. We rise together or not at all. She implemented a profit-sharing plan, brought in external auditors, started replacing layers of bloated management with leaner, ethical hires. "You're burning down the old world," Bob told her. "No, I'm rebuilding it with better blueprints." The return of the ghosts. But not everyone was happy. Everett's attorney launched a counterattack in the media, labeling Clarice a rogue activist with an agenda. Genevieve's PR firm tried to spin the scandal as a misunderstanding, and worst of all, she received a subpoena. Clarice felt the weight of it in her hands like ice. Bob reassured her, "This is how they play. They don't expect you to last the storm." Clarice smirked. "I've worked through hurricanes with no lunch break. They'll need more than paper." Dorian's return. One day, Dorian Shaw, a venture capitalist once interested in buying Bellingrove, requested a private meeting. He walked into her office with tailored arrogance. "Miss Monroe, you've certainly made headlines." "The kind that make people uncomfortable?" she asked. "The kind that make people listen," he admitted. "I'm willing to invest, if you're willing to play ball." Define play. Keep your tone inspirational, your leadership symbolic, and leave operations to us. Clarice leaned forward. "Let me guess, you want a face, not a mind." "I want a brand," he replied flatly. Clarice stood. "Then go buy one. I'm not for sale." He left without shaking her hand, and that night the board voted unanimously to confirm her role permanently. The office lights stay on. At 10:47 p.m., Clarice sat alone at her desk. The skyline of the city glittered below. She opened her drawer, pulled out a photo of her mother, and whispered, "We made it, Mama. Not by luck, by grit." Outside her office, the janitor she once worked alongside passed by. She opened the door. "Hey, Louise, you want some coffee?" He blinked. "Sure, Miss Monroe." She smiled. "Clarice, always Clarice." And the lights stayed on. The tension in the executive boardroom was palpable. 12 members sat around the glass table, each with a printed copy of the motion titled Resolution 11B, Motion to Authorize External Acquisition Talks with Dorian Shaw Consortium. It was a formal attempt to override Clarice's veto and hand Bellingrove to a group of investors who saw organic produce as luxury optics, not values. Clarice stood at the head of the table, dressed in a black blazer with silver buttons. She wasn't delivering fruit anymore. She was delivering fire. The speech they didn't expect. "Let me be blunt," Clarice began. "This company was nearly sold off under fraudulent terms 3 months ago. I stopped it not because I had power, but because I gave a damn." Some board members avoided her gaze. Others sat still. "You want to give it to another shark, a polished one who smiles while gutting what we built." She pointed to the chart on the screen. "We're finally growing again, ethically. Our customers trust us more than ever. Our workers are finally heard. And yet you'd trade it all for a few zeros?" The counterattack. Dorian Shaw himself was in the room as a guest. He stood with mock politeness. "Ms. Monroe has passion. No one denies that. But markets don't move on feelings, they move on profit." He passed around folders. "My offer includes a 60% board payout increase, streamlined logistics, a new tech-forward branding campaign." Clarice laughed once, sharp and cold. "You want to turn us into another soulless app, organic by algorithm. You don't see people, you see margins. And you," he shot back, "see yourself as a hero." "No," she replied. "I see the workers I started beside, and I'll fight for them." The unexpected twist. As the board prepared to vote, something unexpected happened. Lewis, the janitor from her floor, entered the room. People looked shocked. "Sorry," he said, holding up a file. "Ms. Monroe asked me to deliver this if she was ever under attack." It was a petition signed by over 6,000 employees and partner farmers opposing the sale. Attached was a full financial forecast, co-prepared by Clarice and Bob, showing that keeping the company independent would yield more sustainable growth over 5 years. The board flipped through it, silent. The vote. The moderator stood. "All in favor of Resolution 11B, raise your hand." 2 hands rose. Then 1 hesitated and dropped. Opposed? 9 hands lifted. Clarice exhaled, not in relief, but in fire-tested focus. Motion rejected. Bellingrove remains independent. Applause broke out. Even Dorian offered a nod. "You won today, Miss Monroe. Just remember, heroes are easier to build up than to sustain." She turned to him calmly. "Then I'll be real. Not a hero, just a builder." What the vote meant. News of the vote spread fast. Headlines declared, "Delivery woman turned CEO defeats corporate takeover." "Clarice Monroe preserves Bellingrove's soul." "Grit, not greed, wins again." She didn't smile for the cameras. She smiled in the mirror when no one else was watching. Because this time, she didn't just survive, she led. It was just past dawn. The concrete behind Bellingrove's central warehouse still smelled of dew and diesel. Forklifts hummed, pallets clacked, orders printed and taped in rapid rhythm. Clarice Monroe stood by the loading dock in a denim jacket and boots. No makeup, no entourage, just a clipboard in hand and a purpose in her chest. The ceremony nobody expected. No press was invited, no red ribbon, no fake applause. But the workers noticed, and they came. By 7 a.m., the break area was full. Warehouse crew, drivers, cleaners, even a few farmers from nearby co-ops had shown up, boots muddy and faces weather-worn. Clarice stepped onto a crate and cleared her throat. "I won't keep you long. I just wanted to come back to the place I started." The real speech. She held up a photograph. "This is me, year 1, carrying boxes at 2 a.m., soaking wet, swearing at the broken scale." Laughter rippled. "Back then, I didn't think I had a voice. I didn't think I'd ever be seen. But I was wrong." She looked at them, eyes fierce. "You are the spine of this company, and no matter what floor I sit on, I will never forget that. Because if people like us don't get heard, then companies like this don't deserve to survive." Applause thundered, not out of obligation, but pride. The wall of names. She led them to the side of the warehouse, where a large steel panel had been cleaned and bolted upright. On it were the engraved names of every employee and farmer who had signed the petition. Above it, in bold letters, "Bellingrove belongs to those who lifted it." She stepped back. Some wiped away tears. One of the older drivers muttered, This is what legacy feels like." A conversation in quiet. As the crowd dispersed, Clarice felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Luis, the janitor. "Never thought I'd see you up there. Never thought I'd still be standing," she smiled. He handed her a gift, a tattered old glove she once forgot behind in her first week. "Figured you earned this back." She laughed, holding it close. "Thanks, Louise, for never letting me forget who I am." full circle. At the end of the day, Clarice stayed behind. She sat on the same crate she used to eat lunch on years ago. No cameras, no reporters, just the hum of trucks and the pink streaks of sunset above the skyline. And as the warehouse doors rolled shut behind her, Clarice whispered, "We built something that lasts." Then she stood and walked forward, not toward power or fame, but toward something real.